Assalamu alaikum everyone, and thank you for joining us today for the week 9 of the Scopus paper writing workshop. So sorry for the inconvenience. We are having a technical issue, so that's why it's taking time. And right now we are able to start and record as well. So today we will be discussing about one of the aspect that is very important and actually the last part in writing the main manuscript, that is writing discussion and conclusion. So this is the ninth week. So we actually cover from the planning of the paper, then the literature, the model development, the scale development for the data collection, and a bit of analysis and reporting the analysis. And then actually we are here for the writing of discussion. So today we like to cover some of the aspects that we need to cover in the writing and the discussion. So the learning outcome of the objective for today presentation is able to understand the required for what is required for effective writing, discussion, and conclusion section. Appreciative towards three paragraph approach. So again, it's not mandatory, but again, if we can divide the discussion section into three paragraph, it helps us. The key part that we need to cover in the discussion, then actually we move toward the conclusion section, understand what to include in the conclusion section, and the things that we need to avoid in the conclusion section. The first thing in the preparation stage for writing the paper as well as for the discussion and the conclusion section, so we must actually understand the requirement from the journal, and from where we can get it from the journal guideline. So every journal have their guideline for writing, the introduction, the discussion, and the conclusion. We must go there. So what kind of thing we can find? We can find the structure, the word count, the format, as well as the font, the paragraph requirement. So these things we can actually get from the journal guideline. So I always advise, again, you can say I'm doing it for, so we are writing for a new journal. So we must go there and find the guideline. And there are helpful information available. So we must actually have understanding about the journal guideline for writing the word count, the structure, the font size, and the font design or style that they are asking us to follow, as well as the citation style, because there are different citation style available. So it varies. So we must have first-hand understanding about the journal requirement. Other thing, we can actually get some example paper from the journal, so we can have an understanding that what are the writing requirement, the formatting requirement. So guideline is actually just for reading, and maybe if you are able or not able to understand, so then actually go for an example paper to download and to actually visibly understand what is required by the journal. Then the word count, because that's very important. Sometime when we are actually not careful about writing, so the two normal issues that may arise, that we may write more than what is required. Like maybe you can say journal asking, it's a general guideline, which varies journal to journal. So 8,000 word is a normal standard article that we must design. But sometimes we have 10,000. Last month, actually, I have one paper that is 13,000 word, and we need to reduce 5,000 word to make it up till 8,000. So it's very difficult task at hand. So when you are writing, it's always advisable that you have an understanding what is the word required. Because in an open access journal, because it's going to be online, so normally they go for a 10,000 word. But if you are actually non-APC, a standard journal from the Web of Science or the Scopus, so they are looking for something about 7 to 8, including the references and everything. So we must actually keep our understanding about the word count. So I already talked about the structure of the paper. Like you can say, there are difference in guidelines. Like some journals are looking for a standard six-step section in the paper. That is the title, abstract, introduction, then the literature review, method or methodology, data analysis, discussion, and the reference. So some journal are actually having a different section, like when say go to Amplet, so they have the detailed abstract where they have 4 or 5 sections, and then actually you have the introduction, the literature, the method, the data analysis, and discussion. Again, there is also a difference in the how the discussion section is structured. So every journal have a different requirement. We are just actually talking about here the rule of thumb, a simple what to add. But I advise that always go to the journal guideline so that you have the exact understanding what is required. Okay. So what we need to actually write in the discussion. So what I have a understanding, what I follow actually a 3 paragraph. It is not actually the three, more than that. Sometimes you have the more hypothesis or the discussion that is required, but actually it is only a giving understanding what we write in a 3 paragraph. What is the what about the, what we need to include in the first paragraph? What we need to include in the second and the third paragraph? So the first paragraph offer key interpretation. So we have certain findings after the data collection and analysis, and we need to report that what are our findings and what are the meaning of these findings, and we need to provide the main supporting evidences. So these evidences actually came from the literature. So one way, the first paragraph actually we need to describe the finding and their interpretation. Going to the second paragraph, we need to actually compare and contrast our result with the literature. So here, actually, what I advise, what I am doing actually, mostly when I am writing my discussion, so I always actually updating my literature as well. So literature and discussion go hand by hand. So in the next week, actually, when I am actually talking about the writing of the paper, so I will tell you that how I write, which section I write simultaneously so that it effectively reflect in the quality. So the literature and the discussion goes hand by hand because from the literature we are actually reporting that what is the meaning and what are the reported evidences already available in the literature. And here in the discussion we are comparing our current study result with the literature. Highlight the key strength and limitation of the study. Again, there are some you can say some result match, but there are some result that doesn't. So in this way, we can actually highlight the strength and the weaknesses. Like you can say in a standard quantitative study, all the hypotheses are accepted. It's very good that all the hypotheses are accepted and our literature which say that these hypotheses must be accepted. So what is the contribution? So that's a very critical question. Then normally when we are having the quantitative study and where all the hypotheses are accepted, so actually what is the contribution? What is the strength? Just it's a replication study, but many good journal may not actually accept these kind of the studies or the research articles. So some way we need to actually highlight the strength and the limitation. And these limitations may be that your result may not be as good as not according to the literature. It means there is a some extraordinary or non-compliable. So then actually if we have these kind of result or findings, so then we need to discuss unexpected findings. Because these unexpected findings are actually giving rise to some of the contribution. Because if you see, if you say that all the things that what we did, all the result or the finding we have, They are the same as the reported in the literature. So what is new? Why we did our research just only to confirm the already available or reported studies finding. So then it may be not good for Scopus or above Scopus category journals. So it's very critical that we need to find the way out to actually justify the strength as well as some of the unexplored area where we are finding highlight that this is something new. Third paragraph summarizes the hypothesis and purpose of the study. Is a conclusion actually. Highlight the significance of the study, discuss unanswered question and potential future research. It means we are talking about some limitation, the research question that we need to pursue in future. There may be some unanswered research questions that are allied to our study, so we can discuss in the paragraph 3. But again, it is a general understanding that writing in a 3 paragraph, you can say when we are writing the literature or the discussion, so it's a standard advice that write in a 3 paragraph. One paragraph, paragraph 1 is the introduction, paragraph 2 is discussion, and the paragraph 3 is the conclusion. So in this way, actually, we can structure our writing. So key part of the discussion that we need to keep in mind that we must actually include these things. Summarize the key finding in clear and concise language, because that's very important that we talk in a clear and concise language. One issue that I find in many of the reading, local reading, Malaysian reading in university, that we use this. It's actually a very inappropriate term, this, because when we are we are writing the literature or the research, so we are dealing with the non-human. So then actually we must use it instead of this. Or maybe we can use that instead of this. So this term is not good in literature. So we must actually very concise and clear in our language. Acknowledge when a hypothesis may be in. It's very critical. What we think that every hypothesis we write is actually appropriate and there is no problem attached to it. But in discussion section, we can actually highlight any shortcoming or incorrect hypothesis or any issue in our sample or the analysis. We must report and take care of it in the future. So we can actually base our future recommendation on any of the thing that is problematic in our current study. Place your study within the context of the previous study. It means every study that we are writing, it is actually contributing something to the literature. It means we need to justify that among the research, already available research, how our research is actually placed and how it actually contributes something to the literature. Potential research, future research must be discussed. It means the shortcoming, or maybe the future research questions that need to be elaborated or added to answer. We must actually try to provide a takeaway statement to the end of the manuscript. Takeaway statement that where the researcher can build your where you end and they start. Or maybe it actually providing you another way to write or to actually have another research in the same area because you have still some unanswered questions. So it means you must actually go for a takeaway statement so that the future research can be generated. Okay, so this is about the discussion. So discussion section must attach with the literature and the analysis section. It means we must report our finding or the outcome of our analysis, and we actually match and justify that finding with literature. So we must actually include the contributions, shortcomings in this way that actually how our research is actually based with the available literature. So my advice always, you actually use literature review to write your discussion. So actually, literature review help to write an effective discussion, where actually we can compare and sometimes uh, present the idea that our study finding match with the literature, and we actually justify, we actually report that which study our result matched, or otherwise how my study result doesn't match with any of the study, and what are the. Then we move towards the conclusion section, writing the conclusion section. So conclusion section is very, you can say, the last section, and in my understanding, it attached to the introduction. So when I am writing the conclusion, so I actually attach, or you can say match it with the introduction section. Because in the introduction section, we actually have some research objective aim or the research question reported, and we are answering these research question or the objective here in the conclusion. So we need to understand what is the purpose of the conclusion. So it is actually the last paragraph, the last word, it means the last section of your paper. And you must actually answer some of the research question or the problem or the issue that you raised in the introduction. Summarize your thought and convey the larger implication of the study. So again, we need to actually thought about a broader understanding like what we have in the introduction. So in the introduction, we actually start with the funnel kind of understanding where we start with the global world, then actually coming to the national or maybe one issue. So similarly, we summarizing our thought and conveying a larger implication for the study. Demonstrate the importance of our idea, that how our idea, what we present, able to solve some of the issue reported in the introduction. So introducing possible new expanded way of thinking about the research problem, it means that is a food of thought or the future implication that we keep in mind while we are actually maybe looking for another research. So that is the purpose of the conclusion. So it is actually closing, first of all, the closing of your paper. We need to summarize our understanding, our thoughts, and with a larger implication. We need to actually justify the importance of our idea presented in the paper. And we must actually introduce some of the future way of action or thinking to solve the research problem. So the things that we need to actually add in the conclusion section. So the major purpose that our conclusion section is actually restate the main argument, state your conclusion in clear, simple language. Don't simply reiterate your result like what we did in the conclusion, in the analysis and the discussion section. It is not discussion, it is conclusion. So we must actually keep a difference. In discussion, we thoroughly, in detail, discuss the finding. Here, we don't need to uh, write again our finding, but in a broader manner, larger implication. Indicate the opportunity for the future research, and as well as it must not be included in the discussion. So again, I told you there are actually a difference in the structure of the paper according to the journal requirement. So some journal actually take this limitation or the future research options and the contribution in the discussion section. And some paper actually, some journal required you to add these all in the conclusion. And some journal required a conclusion would be only a slim, a smart one paragraph. So accordingly, we need to manage. So this limitation of the study, future research option, and the contribution, generally they are added into the conclusion, but if the journal required, so we can add into the discussion, end of the discussion section. So we need to follow the journal required. So things that we need to add in the conclusion section, answer your research question. So it means whatever we have the research objective, aim, or the research question or objective that we proposed in the introduction section, we must answer these research question. If you have question, answer the question. If you have the objective, so tell how these objectives are met. And if you have research aim, how the aim of the study are achieved. So we must answer our research question, research aim, or research objective. Then we need to add the contribution, or sometimes it's actually added as an implication section. So possibly four implications that we have. Theoretical, it means how our study can able to add something into the theory or the literature. So normally we have some theory that we are actually following or contributing something to, maybe adding some new variable or combining two theories or actually justifying the sequence in the theory. So in this way, some of the theoretical contribution we must write. So in Scopus or Web of Science paper, when we are designing, so we must actually keep in mind that we must have something to justify, to claim a contribution to the theory, at least two or three. Because if we are unable to write anything for the theory contribution, so maybe these journal may not be able, they are not willing to accept the paper without having theoretical or practice or management contribution. So theoretical contribution, that's why I told you that it's actually attached with the introduction. So theory, theoretical contribution, management or practice contribution. So we need to actually understand how the finding that we have, it has something to do with the practice, or change in practice, or effective practice, or something for management. Again, it's a scope of the study that you are having a management or organizational study. So then actually it's go for a management, and if it's a general practice, or maybe a consumer behavior, so it may be a practice. Methodological contribution, sometimes we are actually doing something novel in the methodology, adding a new methodology analysis, or data analysis, or data collection, or maybe combining the two different analytical strategies, or maybe actually innovating some way in the method so that we can actually claim a contribution or the implication for the methodology. Another thing that the good journals are requiring right now, innovation or creativity. That how our study is able to answer something new and how it adds something into the creativity or the innovation or adding to our understanding. So these are the three kind of the contribution that normally we are looking for to add conclusion section. And one last thing that we need to add in the conclusion section, that is limitation and future research option. So it's my advice that again I'm doing it in every paper that we must actually have 3 to 5 limitation, because we need to understand in social science whatever we are doing they have their limitation or the biases. So we must actually report that what kind of the limitation or the issues are there in my study, and how we can actually correct these limitations to actually have some future research option. So it means if you have 3 to 4 limitation, so you may be having 3 to 4 future research options, that how you can correct the method or the analysis that you are following right now in your study, and what are the future research options. So these are the 3 things that we need to add in the conclusion section. So it means that we must answer the research question that we proposed in the introduction section, the claiming implication or contribution in theoretical management methodology, application, creativity, or innovation. And then the last thing, that is the limitation and the future research option. So these are the 3 major sections that we need to cover in the conclusion section. But accordingly, if the general requirement is different, so we actually take that all contribution and limitation into the discussion section, and only we have a very precise paragraph in the conclusion section answering this question, or one paragraph, maybe 10, 20 lines. So that's and according to the general requirement. The last thing that while we are writing the conclusion section, we must actually try to avoid and try to fight. And if we fail in that, so it creates a problem that it not be a genuine conclusion section. So the first thing, failure to match the objective of research. So we must actually match our research objective with the research finding. So it means the conclusion section must talk about the research objective and the research finding, how they are matched. If they are not matched, it means the study is not designed in a right way. Uh, Contribution or the learning, failure to provide a clear summary of what we learn. It means we have some problem, we design a study, we collect the data, we do the analysis, then we are reporting. So what is the finding? What is new learning? So in a concise and clear manner, we must actually summarize the learning. Failure to be so conclusion is the last thing. It means if it is very lengthy, so it create you can say lack of attention among the reader. So it must be concise. Like you can say, if to my understanding, I always have an understanding in my mind that the conclusion section must be 10 to 15% of the total word count of your paper. So if you are writing a 8,000 words, so your conclusion may be only 6 to 800 words of a section. Now, word count. Failure to comment on larger, more significant issue. It means we need to actually talk about the larger issue, not the micro issue that what we design our study on. Like we also, we actually study some of the variable, but these variables are linked to our problem or the issue in a larger scale. So we must include the larger scale, not the variable. Failure to reveal problem and the negative result. So we must actually have a consequences that why this problem is important, and if we are unable to resolve, what are the uh, negative consequences of that. So it means again attach or link it with the introduction. So in this way, we can actually highlight the issues in our discussion in conclusion section that we must include, and we don't fail to match our research objective with the research finding. We must have a precise summary of the finding and the learning. We must be concise. So we must actually talk a macro level issue, a broader issue, not the micro level issues. And we must actually add some of the introduction, the paragraph that we add in the introduction section of the paper, the problem and the issues, and how the problem, if not resolved, is actually linked with the negative consequences and the negative result that we are looking to resolve. So in this way, we actually can structure our conclusion section. So today we discussed about the very two important section in our research article, that is discussion and we need to keep in mind that the discussion is actually linked with the study findings, and these findings are actually reported back in detail in the discussion section, and then actually we utilize the available literature, or maybe we add some new literature in our discussion section to compare and contrast our study finding, so that we can reflect in the later section, in the conclusion section, that how our findings are adding something to the. So it means they are very linked. So discussion section is linked with the analysis and the literature review section. And your discussion section, so your conclusion section is linked with the your introduction, because you are answering the research question that we propose in the introduction, and then maybe you are adding some claiming implication or the contribution at the fourth level, at a theoretical management or the practice, and then actually the methodology if you actually do something new in method, and then for your in creativity and innovation. And in this way, actually, we can have effective discussion and the conclusion section that can go into the a good journal like a Scopus Index or Web of Science text journal. So today we are able to understand the effective writing of discussion and conclusion section. Three paragraph approach for writing discussion. The different part that we need to add or include in the discussion. The conclusion section, why it is important, and recognize the thing that we need to avoid in the conclusion section. So these are something that I like to discuss today in our discussion of the week 9, where we are discussing how to write effectively the discussion and the conclusion section. So that's all for the day. So hopefully, if you have any questions, so I will be here for next 3 to 5 minutes. You can ask. So that's all from my side. So take care and have a nice and good weekend ahead. So week ahead of you. It's not weekend actually. The week ahead of you. So thank you from my side. Hasta luego.